So guess what? We have hit the final home stretch. Time to case up the watch and enjoy it. So you will have a spare gasket in with your parts bag, and I don't want you to confuse it with the gasket that should already be attached to your case back. But if it falls off, the easiest way to tell the two is this gasket is for the movement holder. It's smaller. It's actually smaller than the case back, and it's a little bit of a thicker circumference gasket. And the point of this gasket is to sit right in this ridge line here in the movement holder. And what that gasket is doing, when you thread down your case back, this gasket is pressing down on the movement holder, thus pressing down on the dial, and thus securing the movement and dial and everything into the case tight. And it can be sometimes a little bit annoying getting it to stay in those ridges, but once you've got it secured, it stays. And you see what I'm doing? I'm just dropping it in place, and I'm using my tweezers and fingers to make sure it stays down in that ridge line until it fits. When you twist these gaskets around, they tend to pop back out. There it is. It's in place perfect. So that's step one. Get that gasket in place. Step two, and to a certain degree, I'll call this optional. In the end, I recommend it. But you know, these watches or watch cases are pressure tested with the factory without silicone grease, and at the end of the day, you've got a brand new gasket. You know, your first line of defense against water intrusion around this case back. So, you know, one theory would be, you know, especially since it's a brand new watch and this is a, you know, kind of more of a dress casual watch, I doubt you're going to try to go diving with it. In fact, I would very much not recommend you dive with it or even submerge this watch in water at all, as it's only a 3 atmosphere rating. But still, as that extra, boy, and my gasket just popped out again, but I'll get back to that. But as your last line of defense, you do have some silicone grease with your Casker toolkit, or you can get some. And what I would do is get some of that grease, get a cheap, very fine tip paintbrush, get a little bit on the tip, and you could either paint it on the gasket, right around the gasket's edge. The more thorough job would be to, you know, pull this gasket off, get silicone grease right in the corners here of this case back, and put the gasket back on, maybe even cover the gasket in grease. I mean, that is going to protect your watch more from water intrusion. But at the end of the day, like I said, you've got a brand new gasket there that's not, you know, not aged over time and dried out. I mean, if this watch was a 5-year-old watch or something, I would be highly recommending silicone grease if you were taking it apart and putting it back together or replacing the gasket. So you can do that job now if you like, or just get to putting it together, and maybe it's a good idea to put it together, let it run, and you might want to get to adjusting the movement for timing after you've worn it for a while and taking it back off with the silicone grease on. The case back is a messy job, so maybe just for now put it together and enjoy it for a little bit and see how it's running, and maybe you'll want to adjust timing and take the case back off later. But you will see a notch in the back of the case, and if you're facing the case, the crown will be to your left. The case back goes on like this, with the half display case back showing the beautiful balance wheel there moving. Of course, you're going to want to clean the inside of this crystal out, which I already have done. You're going to want to blow it out, get all the dust out, make sure you don't see anything in your case back. And when you put this down, oriented correctly, you want to be pretty good about just setting it right down. Because if you have to shift it a bunch, then that gasket that's on your movement holder could become misaligned in the case. So you really want to take extra care to set it down perfectly straight and right over, which I've not done just there, right over the holes for your case back screws. See what just happened? I lost my gasket because I was messing with it. So I got my gasket back on and in place. Orient it right. Boy, am I having a time tonight. Sometimes how it goes. There we go. And then you have 4 case back screws. These would be the largest screws with your parts bag. Just grab them all out. My Petri dish. Find the right screwdriver to put it down in. Drop them into place. I put a slight amount of pressure on the case back as I'm doing this. This is where you want to be pretty darn careful, because you don't want to scratch your case back. In fact, I've left my case back protector on for this, for just in case. And I'm not really threading it all the way down. I'm getting them started. I just want to get them all in, and then do the final tightening. Of course, the case back protector's in my way there. You don't want to force these screws in. It should thread in nice and easy. If you don't have it straight, it won't thread, and do not force these screws. You break one of these screws into the case and you're in trouble. Once you get the first couple in, the remaining 2 tend to be easier. I'll get to the last one. Hey, why did that not focus? Pretty simple operation, pretty obvious what I'm doing. I really probably even shouldn't be making you watch all of this, but you might as well see it. This one, last one, I'm going to tighten down all the way. You don't need to screw them down and then add tons of force. You're going to find a good stopping point. They won't come out, I promise. Ooh. All right. Look at that. You have a watch. And what you noticed there was the hand skip. Now I've seen these movements, especially since they're brand new movements, recently greased up and everything, oiled up from the factory. You might see a skip or two on your sweep second. Usually only lasts a few hours. Worst case, you might see it for a day, but I promise you it goes away. Your watch is not broken. Now, it could be skipping if you see that last more than a full day of running, because your sweep second, now that you've screwed everything down, is in fact touching the inside of the crystal. So you might have to take everything out and check your hand, sweep second hand set, but it should be okay. But hey, you're done. You have a watch. You have a Barton strap in your kit, and that is a very easy strap to install. Find one of them in my bag of tricks. I have a bazillion Barton bands these days. Nice if I found a matching set. If you're not familiar with Barton, these guys make a fantastic product. The buckle side goes at 12 o'clock. And you just stick in one side, this tab, pull in, let it set in the lug holes. Much easier than using a spring bar, much less risk of scratching. And look at that. I love it. I hope you've enjoyed the process. I hope you enjoy this watch. The next video that I'm going to be discussing is adjusting and regulating the movement for timing. I found that most of these movements from the factory usually are in the plus 15 to plus 20 range. You also might want to, after all this handling, take a nice microfiber cloth. You do have a polished case here, so you want to be careful. You've got a very clean microfiber cloth, and wipe it all down, make it pretty. But I have found that these movements generally straight from the factory are plus 10 to plus 20. Usually they run fast. Not that fast, really. I mean, plus 10 to plus 20 is acceptable for me. I don't know. I don't have to be anywhere in a day within 20 seconds, and I always have multiple watches. I'm not usually wearing the same watch every day, but you can certainly regulate and adjust this movement to be better. I mean, it's not going to be, you know, chronometer grade or anything, but you can make it better. And I'm going to show you that process using a very exciting tool that I have on the way. That video may come out later than you know, the time you've had this watch and maybe even completed it. So just keep an eye on our YouTube channel. If you're not a member of our newsletter, sign up, and I'm going to do a video on a very cool tool for timing your watch and regulating it. If you want to see one way of doing it, go back to the Series 1 videos. And one of my final videos, I show how to adjust the timing of the movement, but I'm going to get do a much deeper dive in my next video on how to adjust your watch and get it running as best as it can. Hope you've enjoyed the process.